Hi, and welcome to our presentation on using the Beam Clearinghouse to make automated super payments directly from your payroll file. If you haven't already registered with Beam, you'll need to do this before attempting to complete the following steps. For assistance, you can take a look at our previous presentation on Beam registration. Once you are registered with Beam and ready to make your first super payment, you'll need to start the process from here. From your payroll dashboard, you can go down to your Reports tab, and then under the Payroll heading, down to the Super Payments option. Then here on the Super Payments page, you can click on the New Super Payment Batch option, and then you'll need to set the parameters you would like to filter the super batch for. The filter options here include date range, employing entity, pay schedule, and contribution type. The date range can be filtered by month, quarter, or a custom range. Remember that pay runs are identified by their paid date, so contributions will be included in a super batch according to the paid date of the pay run that the contributions were accrued in. If you filter the batch by employing entity, you'll need to make sure that the employing entity is also registered with Beam. For details on how to register an employing entity, you can see our previous presentation. Any pay schedules you have set up in the payroll file will be available for selection here. And lastly, you can filter the batch for all contribution types, or you have the option to filter different contribution types separately. You can see there is super guarantee, salary sacrifice, member voluntary, and employer contribution. For this one, I'm going to filter my batch for the month of August. Once you've set the parameters for the batch, you can then click on Filter. While the batch is being filtered, an initial validation will occur. This validation process will separate the employees into those that have passed the initial validation. Their names will appear in green, and any employees that have failed the initial validation, and their names will appear in red. If you have a number of employees included in the batch, make sure you scroll through all the employees to determine if any of them have errors that need attention. Any of the errors will be detailed next to the employee's name. So you can see here that I have an employee with a missing member number and missing super fund details. You can click on this option here, click to view, which will give you a more detailed look at the issue, and this is also where you'll find the link to fix the issue. In order for these employees to be included in the batch, the errors must be rectified. If, however, you don't have the required information to fix the employee's error, but you still want to process the rest of the batch for the other employees, you can. Just remember that the employees in red that still have errors will not be included, and you'll need to filter another batch to capture these employees once the errors have been fixed. So I'll go ahead now and fix these two errors for these two particular employees. The employee with the missing member number here that you can see, I can simply click on the Enter Member Number option, pop in the member number for the employee, and then once I click on this Save option, that's going to update the member number for each of those contributions that are in the batch. You can then see that the employee's name has now changed back to green, indicating that they have now passed that initial validation. The second error here for missing super fund details can be fixed by following the link, Choose Fund for Automatic Payments. The Super Payment Allocation pop-up box will direct you to the Employee Super Fund Details page, where you can enter the details of the Employee Super Fund of choice. If the employee has not provided you their Super Fund of choice, you can select the Business Default Fund to pay these contributions into. And this is what I'll do for this employee. So I'll click on the No Funds Supplied option. You can see here now they have the option to enter in the details of a regulated super fund, self-managed super fund, or select the employer nominated fund. You can see here that this business has two default funds set up, and I'm going to select the Sun Super one. Once you've selected that option, you can click on OK, and then you can see there that this populates the ABN and the USI for the employee on the super funds page. You can leave the member number blank, and the fund will automatically allocate a member number to the employee once this first payment has been made. Then you can click on Save. Now that the employee super fund details have been updated, when you go back to the super batch screen, you'll need to click on Refresh in the super payment allocation pop-up box. This will update all the contributions in that batch for that employee. So if we scroll back down, you can see now that that employee is now appearing in green, which means that they have passed the initial validation, and you can see there that all of those contributions have been updated with those new super fund details. Now that all those errors have been fixed, you can go ahead and create the batch. You'll need to click on the Create Batch option to do this. As the batch is being created, a second validation will occur. This is now what your created super batch looks like. The batch has been allocated a batch ID up here, and the status is showing as new. At this point, you also have the option to download the details of the payments included in the batch to a CSV or an Excel file. Under this information is an Actions section. Here you will see any actions available depending on the status of the batch. At the moment, we only have the Validate and Delete options. You can delete the batch at this point if you need to, but please be aware that a deleted super batch cannot be recovered or restored, and any changes that were made as part of the batch may not be saved. And then you'll also need to use this validation option if you have made changes and you need those changes to be applied to the created batch. The Submit option will become available once we have rectified any errors. This second validation will show up any issues as either warnings or errors. So warnings are issues that should be fixed, but they will not prevent you from submitting the batch, whereas errors must be fixed before you are able to submit the batch. You can see here in this batch that I have both a warning and an error. So we'll have a look at these warnings and errors now, and I'll show you how to fix these particular issues. We'll firstly take a look at this warning. So you can see here that this warning is letting me know that this particular employee hasn't provided a phone number. If you do have the employee's updated phone number, you can click on the little pencil icon here. This will take you back to the employee's file. You can then go to their details page and enter in a phone number for the employee. You'll then need to save that information. And then once you go back to the Super Funds page, you can validate that super batch again. You'll see here that then you'll then be given the option to refresh the employee data. And that warning has now disappeared. So that employee has been updated and they've passed that second validation now that we've entered in that phone number. Now we'll take a look at the error in the batch. You can find the employee that is associated with the error in this batch by clicking on the Superfund name that has the red exclamation mark next to it. Here you will see the details of the errors. In this particular case, the error is indicating that the employee has an invalid ABN and USI on their Superfunds page. To fix the issue, you can click on the little spanner icon here. Before we do that, however, if you don't have the required information to fix the employee's error, but you still want to process the rest of the batch for all other employees, you still can. You'll need to exclude the employees with any errors from the batch. So to do this, you can select the Exclude from Batch option next to the affected employee's name. You'll see all the employees' contribution amounts will be removed from the batch. If you want the employee included again, you can simply reverse this action by clicking on the Include option. So we'll go ahead now and fix the error for this employee. Once we click on the little spanner icon, you'll get a pop-up screen here, which is fixing the payment error. There's a link here letting you know that there is one employee that uses the fund that this error is related to, and that's our employee there. You can either search for another fund here from the Search Fund option, or we can go back to the Employee Super Funds page and enter in the details of a valid fund here. We can click on the link here for the previous super fund for the employee, and then what I'll do here is I'll actually select the employer nominated fund for this particular employee. I'll get rid of the old member number. And you can see here now that that employee's super fund details have been populated with the employer nominated fund. We can then just save that information. And then when we go back to the super fund screen, we can cancel the payment error pop-up box. And then we'll need to validate the super batch again. So once all those errors have been rectified and the batch has now passed that second validation, the submit option will appear as an action item. When you click on submit, a pop-up screen will appear where you'll need to select the payment details for the batch. There are 3 options for payment: direct debit, EFT, and BPay. There's also an option here to use these selections as default. If you select the direct debit option, you will be prompted to select the bank account you would like the funds to be debited to. You'll then also need to select the refund bank account. If you select the EFT option, you'll only be required to select a refund bank account, and then once you submit that batch, the payment details will appear. This is the same as if you were to select BPay. You'll need to select the refund bank account, and then once you submit the batch, the payment details will appear. If you do select BPay or EFT, you'll be provided with the payment instructions once the batch has been submitted. So you can see here for BPay, this is letting me know that I need to make payment via BPay for the amount of $10,279. And these are the instructions for the payment. So you've got the biller code here and the customer reference number. It's very important to make sure that when you are making a payment to use the correct payment reference number. Using an incorrect payment reference will delay payment and cause you to possibly miss super deadlines. You can then just click on OK. So you can now see that the status of the batch has updated to submitted, and those details that were on the pop-up screen for the payment details, they're all still here within that batch. I'll also mention at this point that once you do submit the batch, you'll receive an email with all of the details of the payment required as well. This is an example of the email that I would have received for that particular batch that I've just created. So you can access the details of this batch and a full history of other super batch payments back on the main super payments page. Here you can see a summary of details for all the batches that have been created and submitted within the payroll file. You've got some filter options here. You can filter by employing entity or date. You've also got some export options. And then you've got the summary of details below this. If we go back to the payroll dashboard now, I'll just mention this one last thing. If there are any issues with any of the super batches that you have created, we'll pop a message up here on the payroll dashboard under the action items. Any of the batches that do require your attention will appear here, and you'll be able to follow this link to review the batch and fix any of the issues. Thank you for taking the time to watch our presentation. And as always, if you do require any further information, please contact your payroll software provider.